Communications, our shoulder to cry on lady person help. Thank you. And also Lori Alpert. I missed Lori because she's really at the very top of the list. And Lori's the head of our Office of Research Support Services. Thanks, Lori. And also Sybil Darable, important new, young, energetic professor from the College of Engineering. And Koros Mohammedian. Koros are one of our elder statesmen who's not so energetic, but still working hard. Well, you got tenure, that's, you know, that's what I know. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay. Thanks very much. So I want to start off our main program, and there are 4 important people we did not mention. So, tonight's program is to feature the former directors and the current director of the Urban Transportation Center. The people that led this organization, helped make it happen, helped continue it to this day. And so I'm going to hopefully call you up in chronological order as to your when you were the director of the UTC. First, the founder of the UTC, the collaborator that made this happen, to start off with, Dr. Ashish Sen. Doctor? Come forward. Well, I don't know who that was. Is that Dr. Michaels? Okay, so Dr. Richard Michaels, who is... Okay, we'll talk about that when you get up here, Buzz. You can correct me when you get up here and get the mic, okay? I've got the mic right now. Please, okay? All right. So our second director, chronologically, though maybe not second really, Dr. Robert Paaswell. Little known factoid, Buzz was my boss back in the 80s. And we can explain that later. Third, Dr. David Boyce. And then someone who, to this day, we still see regularly in our office with his latest joke or picture or whatever he wants to show us, and that's Dr. Siim Soot. Okay, here's your opportunity to think of questions that you would like to pose to this group. Of course, I'm Steve Schlickman, I'm the current executive director, you don't know that. And to lead us, to kick this off, we have the Dean, Mike Pagano, of the College of Urban Planning and Public Affairs, a name that he's going to change. And
change my name, yeah.
No,
college. Change the name of the college.
Yes. Yes. So Mike, take it away.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So welcome, good evening. I'm Mike Pagano, Dean of the College of Urban Planning and Public Affairs. As all of you know, the Urban Transportation Center has been with the college since it was created in 1994 as part of the Great Cities Commitment of the University of Illinois Chicago. What these gentlemen don't know is that we've all been to Second City, and so we're going to start with, I'm going to start telling a story, they're going to tell me freeze, and they'll continue from there, and they'll, no, we're not going to do that. Okay. Oh yeah, how quick are we on our feet? So I am going to ask a few questions to sort of get the ball rolling, and we ask them to sit in chronological order by the way they were involved with the Urban Transportation Center at UIC. And I'd like to start with Dr. Ashish Sen, because you are the originator. You may not have been the first one, Ashish, but what I would like to start with you, the reason I'd like to start with you is that you could explain to all of us what was going on at UICC at the time that there were ideas floated. It was a great time to be at UIC, as it would be in any new institution, when you could say, what would you like to do, or what would you like to be tomorrow? And when you come up with a great idea, they say that's a great idea. So Ashish, could you tell us the history of why there is even an urban transportation center at UIC?
Well, give you the shorter one.
No, I want the long one.
That's too long.
No, we want the short one.
You know, occasionally the provost or somebody sends around what's your best idea, you know, and put it in 2 pages, send it up. So I was acting dean of the college at that time, and I got one of these requests, and I was trying to figure out what I should ask for. And that evening, Milton Pekarsky was over at our house, and he has been a godfather to the whole center for a long time. I said, you know, ask for transportation center. And there was already a use lab in the College of Engineering. I don't know if it still, I don't think it still exists. So I did write the 2-pager, which Milton kind of had some ideas about it. And then the other one, I wrote something about a Center for Economic Development, and I sent them both in. And these things in the university generally get forgotten. You know, you don't hear about them again. But within a month, I heard that the Board of Trustees had approved the Transportation Center. And 2 months later, I heard that the Board of Higher Education had approved it. And I was asked a couple of questions, and it went through the budget, and it was there. So, and I had thought that Milton might one day become the director of the center, but he got interested in the Dean of Engineering job, and he didn't take it. But the university was stuck with trying to, fund it. And every center director knows that the funding is rather small. What they did, I think, is they took some of the use lab money and put it together in a package and put Dick Michaels to run it. And then I don't know where Dick found the additional money to hire Buzz. He was a high paid, very high paid. So that's the beginning story.
That's a great story. Buzz, well, moving on, so you were the second director of the Urban Transportation Center, and so the question I have for you is, so did the transit agencies care about a UTC, and if so, how did you make them care, or if not?
Being a professor, I'm not going to answer your question, but
No,
answer the question. answer the stream of thought that Ashish started, because there's a couple of things to fill in the blanks, and then I
You didn't cover all of them?
then I can.
Go ahead.
Milton was very important because one of Milton's great ideas was to have university centers of excellence, have the government fund university centers of excellence. And he was working on that for a long time, and he felt that the universities in Chicago could eventually band together and form a consortium to do that. And he did the same thing eventually in New York, and Milton was a thread through a lot of their careers, and certainly a big thread through my career. I first heard about UTC when I met Dick Michaels at TRB, and he said, we're looking for a director, and we'd like you to apply. We'd really like you to direct the center. I think Dick and some other people up here felt I had run a center at SUNY Buffalo that had done pretty well, and we had just won 2 years in a row huge UMTA contracts that they were competing against. So Dick felt FTA. But I think probably, looking at the age of the audience, a lot of people still probably recall UMTA, if I'm not mistaken. And so Dick, and Milt said, Milt was very influential in my coming here. One of the roles that I felt a transportation center should have They should be very much involved in the life of the transportation life of the community, which is IDOT, the CTA, city DOT, city public works, etc. And we became very much involved with them. And we were talking at our table. One of the first things we did, we were all computer nuts. We brought the idea of microcomputers to the agencies and taught agencies how to use microcomputers as a way of moving on with their business. We can talk about that later. But that was a quantum leap in some of the things that were happening there.
Let's explain what a microcomputer is.
A microcomputer is like your phone, only big.
Okay, moving on. David, so you come in as another engineer who's taking over for the Urban Transportation Center, and there's a need for research on the needs of Chicago community in the 1980s. What was the role of the UTC in providing that research, and your role in particular? Of course, you can answer your own question if you want, but start with that.
Right. Just like these guys, I'm prepared to say something different, but I am prepared. This is not a paper yet, but it is some data. And when I heard it when I was invited to this, I began thinking back 15 years ago. What did we accomplish during the 8 years that I was director? And I thought about that, and I pulled together some information. I'd like to share a little bit of it with you. You know, the university's point of view on our activities are that we're engaged in three kinds of activity: education, research, and service. And at any given time, I think the center was some combination of those three things. When I moved up here from Urbana-Champaign, I was deeply involved in a couple of kinds of research. And one of the reasons I came up here was because of Ashish. And another reason was Nagi Raphael, professor of traffic engineering. So I'd like to summarize what happened with regard to education and research during those 8 years. First of all, there were 17 PhDs in 8 years, affiliated with the center, supervised by Ashish, Nagi, and me, and John McDonald in economics. He did one. I think that's an amazing accomplishment as I look back on it. All of these students were funded by the Urban Transportation Center. Some of them did theses related to the work that they were funded for, but many of them did theses on related topics, not directly related to the work that they performed as research assistants. There were also 3 postdocs during that period. The faculty in the center, the principal faculty, I would say at that time there were 4 of us. The ones I mentioned, and including Dick Michaels, who was not very active in research. There were some associated faculty, a couple of them are here tonight, one of them is sitting next to me. There was 1 business manager, there was 1 secretary, and there were 0 research associates. The emphasis that me and my colleagues agreed on was that we were going to spend the money on supporting students. And we had quite a lot of money because we were successful in raising, in getting contracts, 1 large contract. But for us, I think, and I think Ashish would agree, that the purpose of doing that work was to support the students. But that's not all we did. I compiled a list of the research that we performed, that was performed by the faculty with the students. 5 books were published during that period that came out of that work, 12 book chapters, and 37 journal articles. I'm not talking about reports, I'm talking about real journal articles. I didn't take time to list all the reports and conference papers, which on my CV I never kept track of, until recently at least. But altogether, over 50 scholarly works. So I think maybe that gives you some sense of what the center was about at that time. We also had a large research project related to intelligent vehicle route guidance. We had other research projects in support of IDOT and in support of CATS and the city. And all of these projects revolved around the graduate students. I don't have any way of knowing how many master's students went through the center at that time, but there were many more than the 17 who did PhDs. Okay, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Well, now, so Siim Soot's going to tell what a geographer does as the director of the Urban Transportation Center. And this is going to be a challenge for Siim because, if you know Siim, he only talks in pictures. So how he's going to present the pictures in words, I'm curious.
I have them in my pocket.
And this will be done in Estonian and English simultaneous translations. Go ahead.
Well, once I remembered that we have a panel here, I wrote all my notes down on a piece of paper. And in my excitement of coming here, I lost it, so I have nothing to say.
Thank you.
Except a few things. First of all, I have to admit that I was the chair of the search committee that brought Buzz Paaswell to Chicago. And Buzz is still very unhappy with me because I offered him everything. And he continues to remind me that we only delivered on maybe less than half of it. But we're certainly happy that he came, and even though he remains a thorn in my side as he continues to remind me of that. I might also say that in those early days, when Ashish was thinking about formulating the center, we had 14 graduate students. And in essence, we were looking over at our friends over in engineering in the Urban Systems Lab, and thought, well, we can do at least as well as they can. So that was a little bit of a background. We accomplished a lot at that time, and it gave us a lot of momentum going into the creation of our own transportation center. As a geographer, I might remind you that I think UIC was the first university to have a full course, 1-year sequence in GIS. And that was started in 1968 by one of my former professors at Northwestern. I was hired in '70 to teach those courses. And I can tell you, in those early years, it was very difficult to attract anyone to sessions. We had sessions, if you know the M-Copter, which is now called Transport Chicago. We had session after session, and just the presenters were there. No one else knew what the heck this GIS business was all about. But anyway, I think that certainly put UIC on the map, and then that's been very useful in the work that we've done in the center.
And no pictures. Okay, thank you. And so the current, latest contemporary director of the Urban Transportation Center, Steve Schlickman. Steve, you just heard where they came from. What's different today than what they confronted over these last 25, 35 years?
No, we're still chasing money. First of all, let me say, as a non-PhD trained professional, having gotten my JD, however, I do feel humbled to be amongst this rather esteemed group of transportation professionals, and it's great to have you here today. David, it was great to hear your summary of the history, which I was not aware of the specifics of it, and so that was very helpful. No, I think from the very beginning, as someone said, you had very little money, and you had to get money, because the UTC, like many research centers, most research centers, I think, we're called a soft money organization. And I think one of the values I brought to this was the ability to raise money. And I've certainly used my network as best I can. And today we're sitting in a pretty good financial situation, having over 30 research projects underway, funded through 3 federally designated university transportation centers, having the continued and growing support from our friend, the Illinois Department of Transportation. David, thank you for being here. And from many other sources, be it small or big, that we've been able to cobble together. And it's a big part of the director's job to make sure that people are funded and that we continue, as David said, that mission of education, research, and service. We certainly are carrying forward that today. Last year we had 35 students, research assistants, that we housed. We had to reconstruct our office to accommodate them all. We greatly appreciate our students, we cherish our students, and we want to see our students succeed. That's one of the most important things that we're all about. And it's great to see students that work in our shop while I've been at UTC. And I'm going to look forward to seeing how they succeed in the future and become future leaders of the transportation industry.
Thank you. I'm going to leave a few time for some questions from the rest of you, but I'd like to go back to Ashish and ask, what was when you designed the concept of the Urban Transportation Center, what was the critical issues that you thought this Urban Transportation Center might address? And I'm going to ask each of you then to tell the other 4 directors here to tell me what the one key concern was while you were the Urban Transportation Center director that you wanted to address. Just one. I do expect you to remember.
I was trying to recall the proposal. The original part of my proposal is on an old computer that I think is in George Janus's house. So I think it was to support the transportation industry in this area was the primary thought at that time. But if you permit me to go back and look at our successes, one of our great successes has been our students. And they have done so well and made such an impact on so many things. I think I wholeheartedly agree with David's presentation on that. One thing that Siim did not mention is that, actually, oddly enough, I ran into another center-connected person last night by chance, and he reminded me that this color coding of the CTA system was Siim's idea. I had no idea.
I stole it from somewhere else.
Good ideas are stolen.
I couldn't remember the names.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to answer the question. My focus was on building a center that could serve the public arena. I felt the whole thing that interested me in transportation was the fact that I love cities and I love the dynamics of cities, and I didn't know how could I make an impact on cities, and I stumbled from soil mechanics into transportation and felt that's where I could begin to work on improving cities and the quality of life that flows from. Quality of life, of course, is a word that was invented much more than 35 years ago when I first came there. But I think it's important for everyone to understand that when university research centers are first started, there has to be a reason that you can attract faculty away from their departments and work with the center, because there's a pull of a faculty member to a department, give all the credit to the department, do the grant writing through the department and not through the center. So our role, I think the role of all the directors, was to create that vision, and also I felt to create a mix of people from engineering, from business, from planning, from economics, who could jointly, and again, before the word interdisciplinary became big, but have this mix of disciplines work on these very complex problems to the satisfaction of two masters. One, as Dave pointed out, it's very important for a faculty member to be promoted to work on serious scholarly research, but at the same time, it's very important for your client to get a product that would satisfy them in terms of the quality and knowledge and the ability to implement, whether it's a change in policy or change in regulation or change in procedure in the transportation world. So we had to, in a short period of time, follow both of those avenues and make it happen. And I think with the help of everyone around the table, and Nagi, who's in North Carolina now, we had a great group to begin focusing on that and get it done. We also began working, and that again was Milt's vision, with the University of Chicago, University of Illinois Downstate, and Northwestern, and IIT, with faculty members from there. So we broadened our scope into having people with more disciplines talk around broader problems and then see what each could contribute.
Thank you. David, what was your big issue?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it while they were talking. There's a story here. I got interested in in-vehicle route guidance systems completely by accident, and with a lot of good luck. I'll mention some of the luck later. We built that up into a very large-scale project. But the accident was this. In the early 1980s, I had the good fortune of being invited to Japan several times. And one of those invitations was for a conference in 1986. And it was one of these conferences where it was something about communications. And each of several people were assigned topics. And since I worked in transportation, I was assigned the topic of transportation and communication. And I thought, what in the world am I going to say about that? And that was summer of '85 or so, and I was on an airplane, I think coming back from Europe, and I picked up a magazine and read about a new in-vehicle navigation system. Basically, what we now call put GIS in the car for the first time. It was called ETAP. It was a little device that, not using GIS, it was way ahead of GIS, that would allow you to navigate around a road system. And I looked at that and I thought, what if we connected a communication system to ETAP? Now, there wasn't anything very novel about that thought, because probably a lot of people were thinking about how could we do that. But I began thinking that through. How could we connect conceptually a communication system to this in-vehicle device and use that to send information to a central traffic information center and retrieve information back into the vehicle. And that was the basic concept of the advanced system, what became the advanced system. Now, the good luck, there were a couple pieces of good luck. One was that Motorola, who was riding high at that time with innovations with regard to cell phones, someone at Motorola was thinking along the same lines and said, couldn't we do something about in-vehicle navigation and have a second sort of cell phone explosion of a market. Well, Motorola invested a lot in that. They convinced the state of Illinois to carry out a field test, and I think we knew enough about it. We had the right connections with the state that we became, we being Urban Transportation Center and Northwestern, and Pete Nelson's computer science group, he's still here, became sort of the academic and research side of that project. And I'll take credit for having the idea. A lot of other people had the same idea, I think, but there was a tremendous amount of good luck that we actually pulled that off. And I think in the end, we actually had contracts for about $8 million as a result of that.
Great infusion of cash. And on the cash point, I think one of the great contributions from the state of Illinois was through the METC program. Siim, could you tell us a bit about how METC came into being and why you are the color guy? I didn't realize that. Wow. But not the pink one.
Let me just respond initially to what Buzz said, or expand on it. Indeed, one of the easy things about the Transportation Center is that we have an opportunity to bring in people from so many different disciplines. And I think in some ways that was an easy sell, though I know Ashish did a lot of hard work in creating it. We have Susumu Kudo over here, who has a PhD in economics. He was associated with the center. We have two staff members who did their graduate work in geography. We have people from engineering. The color coding work was together with Herb Stenson, who was from psychology. There are people from public health on traffic safety issues. Basically, transportation covers almost the entire university, and that's certainly been true, even though there's some hurdles in that process. You asked about concern. Maybe I can say a little bit about that too, which is that you may not know this, but not everyone in Illinois is on the same side of a transportation issue. We worked on the Ileana Expressway system. That still is in the news. We got involved at one point in the Lake Calumet Airport, which was very controversial. There's always a little bit of a concern for us as to when we do our work, how that's interpreted and how it's going to be used. So I wanted to point that out. So you had a question for me too?
I don't know why I have these questions. METC.
Yes,
Tell us about METC. That's an important foundation piece for the UTC.
Yeah. METC is an acronym for Metropolitan Transportation.
We're changing the name, Noro.
Oh, good. Oh, goodness. Yes, very good. Very good. That was something that Ashish and Joe were working on, one of the remarkable periods in the UTC was when Ashish left. He went somewhere to Washington. I don't know what he did there, but
Screwed it up. We all do when we go to Washington. That's all we do. That's our job.
Joe, what I remember about Joe was that he was forever calling people. He was forever making contacts, and he knew who to talk to and what to ask. On slightly a different note, we received a $300,000 grant from CN. They don't like to be known as Canadian National, just plain CN Railroad. And someone asked Joe, "How did you get that?" And Joe said, "I asked." But Joe was just a remarkable person. He knew how to move METC through the legislative process in Springfield. And it's just astounding how we weren't quite sure whether it was going to be a one-year program, two-year program. We always were concerned that because of state financial problems. That's another thing you may not know about. But, the state is not flush with cash, and so every year that was of some concern to us. But somehow Joe knew who in the state legislation in the state to talk to, and I give Joe so much credit. It's just so sad that he's not here with us right now, and I'm involved in that effort to raise funds for Joe's scholarship. I remember when in his last days we went to visit, and he just swelled up when he heard that we were going to create a scholarship in his name. So please remember that.
Thank you. My last question before I turn it over to you is to Steve. Tell us about, I think we heard a very quick overview of what Steve has been able to accomplish as the executive director of UTC over the last 4 years. Seems like a lifetime. 4 years. It's been a lifetime for you too. And that is the number of graduate assistants who are on funded research, the amount of research funding that comes in from the federal, state, and local governments and elsewhere, the gifts from CN and elsewhere that really help support UTC. And so now, Steve, where's the future? And what do you see in it?
Well, because Congress and the federal government is so screwed up, if you hadn't heard. Yeah, right. You know, it's been so. You know, a couple of years ago, when they actually fired 59 UTC's University Transportation Centers, and then recompeted it for only 22, and we were lucky to be on 3 of them. Then they had MAP 21, which changed the program, which required another competition, and that was only for 2 years. And then they had MAP 21, which recompeted the program again. They expanded the program to 35, but did not increase the funding. In fact, I think we took a haircut in the total program, which actually, for us, caused a big drop in funding. We went from $1 million a year from that program to less than $200,000 a year in that program. And so that's why I started off by saying I'm always chasing money, because even though you're doing well, and we really are at the zenith of, I think, of the amount of money and the amount of research that's going on, and in trying to manage that level of research and doing it as productively as David did back in his tenure, and to have the same results, but have to worry about the future and figuring out how you're going to keep, not just your staff, but more importantly, keep the number of students that are coming through our program who are going to benefit from it, and provide them the financial aid they need and can use for their education, is a tough job. And so we'll keep chasing it.
President Bush says, this is hard work. Questions out here? Down now. No, the bar's open. Oh, yes, we have a question.
I'm just curious if you see the game changers, anything out there that's going to make transportation transform itself. And then the flip side even is ideas that people are hot and heavy on now, but aren't going to go anywhere. I mean, I think back when I was a kid with the Jetsons with the little cars, flying in air, and obviously haven't got anywhere. I don't know.
I would just like to say that I'm frequently asked, what's the solution to the transportation problem? And I always say the same thing, which is that if I knew what the solution was, I would not tell anyone. I mean, we want to maintain our profession.
Is the press in the room? I don't think we need.
But I think the reality is the future has to be in energy. I mean, right now, we're going through a lull where petroleum prices have dropped 20–25% in short order. But I think as we move toward cleaner environments, move toward more efficient movement systems, and I think the automated highway systems that can pack more vehicles onto the expressway systems, I mean, that's nothing particularly new, but it's not there yet, except in experimental circumstances. So I think that's the prospect of moving more people more efficiently, and that's really where the future is.
I'd like to add something to that. I think it's all about technology. And the most intriguing one for me is the driverless car, which actually has been around for, I've driven one 15, not driven, sat in one 15 years ago. And with driverless cars, you get other driverless vehicles, driverless buses. The biggest cost of a bus, if it disappears, then there's no particular reason to have large vehicles. You can have smaller vehicles. And the difference between car and bus is going to get obfuscated. The difference between private and public is going to get obfuscated. And one of the things that I'd like to do, and that's the reason I grabbed the mic and kept it, one of the things that I'd like to really see is us really, focusing on it, because every time there's a technological change, somehow the public side gets left behind. And I'd like to see the public side get ahead of the game in this case, and so that we start seeing the transportation world as a system, as opposed to an anarchic, everyone doing whatever they want to do. And I don't know quite how to make it happen, but this is where I'm seeing the immediate short term, immediate meaning 20 years from now, going.
Let me just add to what's been said, because I think a number of people are working on this. To me, the simple answer to your question is information, real-time information. And the fact is that both the transportation providers and the people, the users, have the same information available to them. And today, people are making choices of how they travel, not through going to a bus stop and looking when the bus is coming, if indeed the schedule is up there, but going to their smartphones and saying, do I take a bus, do I take Uber, do I go to a parking space if it's available, what's the traffic look like, do I even go to work, anything else. There's also a big cultural shift in who's using the smartphones, the Generation X or whatever they're not my generation, that's for sure. We don't know how to use them. But there's a cultural shift. We know that auto ownership is down, but people will still get around. They might use an Uber instead of their own car. We know that VMT is down. We know that there is a demand that moving back to cities globally is up. There's a change in culture going on, and there's a change in information. The real question here is the real barriers to change, I think, are our transportation institutions, which have been around, mostly DOTs and transit authorities, which have been around since 1916, 1923, Title 23, that said all the states should have state highway departments or state DOTs, and that's where all the federal money is going, and all the programs that followed off out of that, the joint planning regs and all the programs that come in, all the highway legislation, and the UMT Act of '64, the same kind of thing. And those are becoming outdated because there's a merger of what transportation means to the next generation of users. And I think we're at the bottom of the S-curve, and we really have no idea of how fast this shift in information is going to change us. And just think, 5 years ago, almost no one had a smartphone, and now everybody has a smartphone. 2011, I always cite, is a milestone year because in 2011, more people accessed the internet by a smartphone than they did by their computers. So things are changing.
If I could make a comment about the same topic, except it's more urgent, and I think that's the need to renew the system that we have. And I think RTA has done a great job in documenting that. But no one seems to be listening. And we have to find a better way of getting that story out.
Sorry. This guy is dedicated and committed to maintaining the existing system. One more question? One more question.
How important is it for students who work at the transportation center to have like state-of-the-art technology and tools available to them to complete their projects? in mind the future technologies that you talked about?
Well, I think in part because, again, since the transportation center is a multidisciplinary unit, we bring in talent and individuals from a whole series of different disciplines. We made mention to our friends over in engineering, the IT work that they're doing there. And just a little footnote on that point, UIC has always been sort of an innovative place. When it was first formed, in engineering, there were departments called systems engineering, information engineering. All of that was changed. Urban planning, where UTC is currently located, was known as the College of Urban Sciences. But I think we had an opportunity in the late 60s, early 70s to build a world-class institution and bring in investments, new research strategies, and equipment. I remember moving into a new building in 1970 and being given $70,000 to equip the geography department. And we bought a huge 4x6 digitizing table. I mean, and some other equipment at that time, key punches and so forth, that were not that valuable anymore. I also remember buying, at that time, our computer lab had 5-function calculators in them.